Long-time followers of the channel will already know that I've spoken at length about the 2017 It movie in my initial review of it a few years back when it released. Now, for this reason, I was kinda humming and hawing about whether I should include it in this marathon at all. You know, did I really want to give a slot to something I'd already spoken about? Would that be a waste? But in the end, I decided that no, it was important to this list because not only for me is it the epitome of what this marathon actually stands for, but also it marks the perfect transitional horror film for someone new to the genre just wanting to get a little bit deeper in there. So what do I mean by that? Well, you'll notice that so far the movies I've covered have skewed towards more child-friendly / wimp-friendly outings. It is not child-friendly. In fact, it is so child unfriendly that it'll drag them into a sewer, chew off their arm, and eat them. So why include it here? Well, to talk about that, we have to talk about what I consider to be really the whole point of this marathon to begin with. Yes, on one hand, it was just to spotlight some good fun films even self-confessed horror wimps can enjoy, but the intention wasn't solely just to put out a list of horror movies or just movies with a spooky theme for people who don't like horror. It was to shut out what I consider to be an unfair perception of the genre as nothing more than gore and cynicism. It can also be gore and optimism. So while a lot of the films featured before and after this will often lean towards more PG affairs, I think the inclusion of 2017's It is an important one for me because my ideal audience for this whole show is someone who doesn't watch horror, but is open-minded and willing to dip their toe in the softer stuff, and when they feel ready to go deeper into the genre and get a little bit scared, dive headfirst into the jaws of an evil shape-shifting clown as almost like a gateway drug to far more intense, and yet still wholesome and wonderful, horror features. Now, for those of you that haven't seen the film and only know it as that movie where children are brutally murdered and eaten alive by a dead meme, you're probably wondering why I can justify putting this into a wholesome playlist. And to that I would respond that while this is a movie where literal children are repeatedly tormented and brutally murdered, while it is a movie where the only adults that populate the world are at best useless and indifferent and at worst actively malicious and sinister, and while it is violent, scary, and even perhaps sometimes cruel, it is more importantly, absolutely, genuinely fucking beautiful. I realise if you haven't seen it, that probably sounds like pretty ridiculous, but I mean it. I mean it deep down in my very soul. It 2017 is a beautiful movie. One of the most touching, affecting, and intimate depictions of childhood friendships I have personally ever seen, and it honestly makes me weep tears of cathartic joy every single viewing. And I am well on my way to seeing it into the double digits. If it's not clear by now, this film means an awful lot to me, and I think that sentiment was probably clear in my original review. In fact, one of the first pieces of fan art I ever got was actually in response to that video and was myself drawn as Pennywise, given to me by a lady from Poland, and I adore it so much I keep a print of it on my office wall. In fact, I loved it so much back then, I remember when reviewing it initially, some of the comments actually pushed back at my enthusiasm, with people being confused or surprised at just how much I heaped on adoration. There was something of a sentiment amongst a few of the viewers that ranged from, "What is this lad talking about? This movie wasn't even scary," to, "I mean, it was okay, I guess, like good even, but not that good." And these kind of comments came up often enough that I started to question myself, like, maybe it wasn't that good a movie? Like, maybe it's decent, but I just kind of got carried away with the hype or swept up in the surprise of how good it was that I actually overestimated how much I love the film. But here I am, 3 years later, and onto what's probably my 23rd or 24th viewing of the film. I don't even think I'm exaggerating with these numbers. And this film still affects me as much as it did that first time I saw it in theaters. So anyway, enough preamble gushing about how much I love the movie, because I swear if I don't stop myself, this is going to be the next 32 videos. On to more important matters. For those who haven't seen this film, what's the crack with It the movie? Well, set in the geek-quiet middle American town of Derry, Maine during the late 80s, It follows the stuttering, unthreatening Bill Denborough and his ragtag group of friends and nerdy bully bait, the Losers Club. One day during a rainstorm, Bill builds a paper boat for his younger brother Georgie, who goes outside to play with it. Everything is kind of whimsical and wonderful until the boat is swept into a nearby storm drain. A storm drain where this big spooky bastard lives. This is Pennywise, a terrifying, hideous clown that for some reason this idiot child trusts. I'm not saying Georgie deserved to die, I'm just saying it's a literal fucking demented looking clown living in a storm drain. You might be 6, kid, but stranger danger, mate. Howay. And this encounter ends with Georgie in a genuinely holy shit, I can't believe they showed that much moment of a scene having his arm chewed off and being dragged into the drain, never to be heard from again, except as another name in the long list of missing children that are slowly becoming a trademark feature of this quiet suburbia with a dark hidden secret. 1 year later, and struggling to move on from his grief while holding himself somewhat responsible for Georgie's disappearance, Bill, along with the help of his gang of friends, are determined to find out what really happened, and maybe even save Georgie, who Bill believes could still be alive. Spoilers. He definitely isn't. As their investigation deepens, they too find themselves coming face to face with the sinister and mysterious Pennywise, portrayed with an absolutely fucking flawless and downright iconic performance from Bill Skarsgård, as well as some seriously fucked up bullies. Must be exchange students from Jarrah. That is a joke that 0% of you will get, because it is very, very localized in its punchline to a very, very specific area in the northeast of England. But you know what? Fuck it. I said what I said and I stand by it. And so the group must band together to overcome their greatest fears and attempt to put an end to Pennywise's terrifying reign of fear over the children of the town. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's the whole gist of things. On paper, I guess it sounds like a somewhat bog standard horror movie. Monstrous killer, a group of friends must overcome or die trying describes more than a fair share of films. But what separates it out from the rest of the pack is the absolute heart with which it tackles this setup. When adapting from the Stephen King book of the same name, the filmmakers chose to make the smart decision to, with this first film, adapt only the childhood sections, much like the first part of the miniseries adaptation, only to greater success. While the book seamlessly interweaves 2 time periods, often jumping from the children to their adulthoods on an almost chapter by chapter basis in order to better explore the themes of how we carry our childhood trauma into our adult lives, It Chapter 1 does away with all of the adult sections entirely, instead choosing to focus exclusively on the Losers Club during their kid years, and in my opinion makes a much tighter narrative with new compelling themes as a result. If It the book's strongest theme is that of childhood trauma, then It the movie's strongest theme is that of childhood friendship. While that is a prevailing theme throughout the book, here it becomes a lot more the point of the narrative, and it is a point extremely well made. And this is why I'm including this film in this marathon. These kids are absolutely excellent and have such a heartfelt and earnest on-screen chemistry, and the film capitalizes so much on the genuine beauty of their relationships that I have absolutely no quarrels calling this film wholesome. Even with all the skin carving and abusive parents and dead kids. I know that sounds nuts, but I swear to you, this shit is the most wholesome thing I've ever seen, entirely on the strength of the wonderful friendship between these children. Hell, even if you remove the friendship aspect of it, the film approaches its world with a degree of enchantment and innocence that's almost Spielbergian. From the fully realized 80s Americana backdrop, to Richie's comedic smartmouth, to seemingly out of nowhere segues into kids having rock fights, there's consistent and thorough moments of levity amongst all the bleakness of it all. It sparks joy and wonder between its moments of straight horror in the same way kids' adventure films like The Goonies or Stand By Me do. There's this innocence and beauty to the moments where the kids are just getting the little junior investigator on, or having spit competitions, or grappling with their first crush. It isn't all just doom and gloom. There's room for wonder, and it's through this kind of back and forth battle of bleakness versus heart, fear versus love, loneliness versus friendship, that it ends up becoming exactly what I feel horror should be. Yes, horrible things happen to our heroes, but the end result of this terrible journey is a combination of stronger bonds, strength through trauma, and closure on grief. There are so many moments in this movie that I can point to and just go, that is fucking powerful, dude. Just inject that shit into my veins. For me, this is the poster boy example as to why I personally enjoy horror, as well as kind of the poster boy example that you can kind of point to as an antithesis and counterpoint to the ongoing narrative that horror is nothing more than mindless killing. It does not kill its heroes or the characters connected to them in a mindless way. Georgie's opening death is not like, say, a Saw death, or a Friday the 13th death, where it's just kind of a shocking, scary, violent thing that happens and then we all move on. It is a death that is literally grieved the whole movie. It's a tragedy that drives the entire story. While disturbing and brutal for sure, it is never treated like this throwaway thing, and I love that. A terrible thing happens, but there's a silver lining to even this most awful, horrendous act, because it brings our heroes closer, and through this, Bill finds the strength to grieve and move on. And the scenes in which these progressions occur are, for me, just so genuinely moving. In my opinion, horror at its best shouldn't just be about telling us the world is this awful, bleak, terrible place. It should be about telling us that no matter how awful, no matter how bleak, no matter how terrible things get, there is a way to find strength in these darkest and most frightening moments and come out the other end of them a better, stronger person. In this case, that rings true with It, and the characters find this strength through their friendship. There are moments where this core idea is just so perfectly distilled into something as simple as a single look or line or action that is just so pure, it makes me bawl, man. I can't even express quite how much I adore this thing without giving an example of a thing that happens in it. So if you'll allow me a spoiler for a moment, I just want to gush for a second. Skip here if you don't want spoilers. Obviously I recommend the movie. If that's not clear yet, go watch it. But if you don't mind, I want to talk about a scene in the film that just completely encapsulates why I love this thing so much, where Richie and Bill, arguably the closest relationship of the whole movie, have this huge falling out. Much like the rest of the film, it captures the feeling of being a kid so well. It's the kind of falling out you'd have with close friends as a child that would in that moment in your small little bubble just be the end of the fucking world. The moment where just your entire friendship with this person just seems to shatter like glass in front of your eyes. The kind of minor life experience that as a kid felt important and huge and horrible. Bill is too obsessed with trying to find Georgie and too incapable of moving on, and it's tearing his friend group apart as he's continually putting them in danger. And none are more terrified and vocal in their opposition to tackling Pennywise than Richie, who is mortally afraid of clowns. This leads to Bill and Richie having a fight, and the Losers Club falls apart. That is until one of the group, Beverly, gets kidnapped, and Bill desperately tries to bring the gang together to try and save her. When he first sees Richie at that point, Richie wants nothing to do with him. But the second Bill says Pennywise took Beverly and Richie knows his friends need his help, he doesn't even question it for a second. No reluctance, no fear, no contempt for Bill. His mate needs him and he's there. Fucking quality. But it gets even better when this reunion leads to a final confrontation where Bill is captured and tells his friends to leave so they can save themselves, and for a moment, it looks like Richie is about to, as he lectures Bill on how this is his fault and he shouldn't have brought them here and lists all of the ways he suffered for Bill's friendship, only to end his speech by brandishing a bat and with a sigh saying, "And now I gotta kill this fucking clown," and my eyes waterfall. My God, that moment for me is just absolute magic. I am so proud of Richie when he delivers that line. I'm so touched by how much his love for Bill and his friends just unquestionably outweighs his fear, and just how strong the gang becomes in that instance of pure unity, and the immediate following scene where they all gang together and kick the shit out of the clown that murdered Bill's brother is just pure catharsis. Setting up not only for an instance where Beverly finds the strength to metaphorically destroy her abusive father, but also where Bill is finally able to accept Georgie's loss, but in a way that his friends can be there to comfort him as he does it. And oh my God, are we sure this film isn't part of the Goosebumps series? Because I fucking got them. Oh God, I love it so much. And listen, if I could level with you all for a minute, I am aware from the responses to this movie that it does not work for some people the way it worked for me. I understand that a lot of people think this is a very good movie, great even, but that they don't quite get why I put it on quite so shiny and high a pedestal. But I have to tell you, to me, this is a perfect film. It's flawless. I understand that it's not really, but to me it is. I considered briefly leaving this section out of the review because it's a little personal, but honestly, what is a response to art if it isn't personal? So if you'll allow me very briefly to go a little heavy, let me tell you that I have been these kids. I have been pushed around, I have been bullied, I have been a loser. Still am. And I have experienced unexpected and unfair losses at an age where it was deeply confusing and scary, and I also experienced loss very recently. And in all these moments, I have had friends who are also losers, and I swear I mean that affectionately if any of you are watching, that have been the thing that has gotten me through these times. I went to an incredibly rough secondary school. And during my time there, I was physically assaulted 7 times. All of them for stupid, petty reasons. You know, like one time it was just because I was wearing the Blink-182 hoodie. And that apparently made me a goth, which is a sin, apparently. Sometimes just for no reason at all. And one of the times I was assaulted so badly that I had to go to hospital to get checked out for concussions and help reduce the swelling and have stitches and stuff. But the other 6 times I walked away with nothing more than, you know, a bruised nose or a bust lip. And the reason those times were different is they were the times that I weren't on my own. They were the times when I had friends who literally pulled a guy off of me while being attacked themselves so that I could get away. Friends who, when a kid punched me in the face and then tried to glass me with a smashed bottle, physically stood in the way and nearly took the stabbing themselves just so that I wouldn't get hit anymore. A couple of years back when I lost a friend unexpectedly who was just way too young to die, it was a mate that stayed on the phone with me for hours while I wept because I couldn't make the funeral and was in a different country. And she stayed on that international call till her bill went well into the triple digits, just to make sure I was okay. And when I did get home, it was that late friend's fiance and her best friend who let me cry on their shoulders at the New Year's Eve party when she wasn't there to see it. Even though they knew her better than I did, even though they had more reason to cry than me. And these are friends that I've known from when I was young. These are friends I've grown into an adult with. And it sounds stupid, but when I watch it, I see these friends. I see myself messing around with mates in what we called this horseshoe tunnel, which was this minging, dirty, man-made cave in the local park that had this gross-ass manky river water run through it because we were 12 and didn't realise that was a disgusting place to hang out. When Richie picks up a bat to fight an evil clown, I see my mates putting themselves in danger to drag violent, drunken kids off me. When the Losers Club helped Bill through his grief, I see my friends staying on the phone with me for an ungodly amount of hours on a ridiculously expensive international call, and my other hurt friends being a shoulder to cry on. I see my friends making the absolute worst of times into something I could fucking tolerate. And I'm not even telling you some of the more amazing things them and others I haven't mentioned have done for me over the years. And it sounds stupid, I know it does, but when I watch It Part 1, a horror movie about an evil shape-shifting clown that lives in a sewer in suburban America and eats children, I am somehow reminded of just how great friends are. And I am assured of how through the people we meet in life who love us and we love back, how through them we can often find the strength to carry on no matter what, even when the what is an evil clown trying to eat your face. God, horror can be fucking great, can't it?